The definition of the word book has become rather slippery in recent months. Of course, you can download and read books on the Amazon Kindle. You can also download and read books on the iPhone. You can even get a Kindle app from the iTunes App Store and then read books on your Kindle on your iPhone. Or, for those of you who prefer to listen, there's always Podiobooks.com with free MP3 podcast novels. In the desktop browser, there's DocStock and Scribd. DocStock embeds ads in books and shares revenue with the author, while Scribd is trying to become a sort of iTunes of books by allowing anyone to upload and sell their documents. And now, the big boys are getting into the mix. Just last week, Google announced that they too, by the end of 2009, will sell ebooks much like Scribd. And AT&T has announced that they're working on a Kindle killer. So what does all this mean? Well, the book publishing industry is terrified, but there's probably never been a more exciting time to be an author. The ways in which people discover books has also changed. Gone are the days when an author could simply hide in their house behind a typewriter. Now they have to communicate with their readers via Facebook, MySpace, Twitter, and of course, Goodreads.com. And with me today is Otis Chandler, CEO and founder of Goodreads. Otis, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mark.
So these various formats, the Kindles, the DocStock, Scribd, iPhone, what do you consume? Do you own a Kindle? Do you actually use it?
I do own a Kindle, and I have to say, I had to warm up to it, but I actually really like it now.
Were you a believer in the Kindle before you got it?
Not at all.
See, I wasn't either. I thought I'd be one of these people who hated it, because I love books. I love, reading a book, on the beach. I actually had read books on the iPhone before, but I never finished a book on the iPhone. I'll put it that way. I sampled reading a book on the iPhone. It just didn't work for me. So, but you like it?
I like it. It's convenient, and they've solved a lot of the problems that the Sony e-reader had. Yeah. The interface is far, far, far from perfect. It's actually, abstractly a pretty bad interface, but it works. You can search, you can jump to pages, all that stuff.
Well, but there are no pages. I mean, that was actually one of the things that weirded me out a little bit, because you can resize the fonts, you lose the definition of what a page is. You just have regions in the Kindle.
You do, and that's actually a bigger problem than you might know.
Well, what's your view on that? Why would it be a bigger problem? I just find it odd. I don't see it particularly as a problem, but why would you think it's a problem?
Just in I don't know, I've had discussions with guys who make ebooks, and it just throws a lot of loops their ways. And in other things, like I can't say I'm on page 45 of this, because
there is no page 45.
That can mean a lot. We actually have a feature where people can microblog their status.
Yes, I've seen that.
I'm on page 200 of this, and for Kindle readers,
I don't know what page I'm on. There is no page.
It's broken.
But you also lose you lose some of the fonts. It's not all of them, but you do lose. It's not the same degree of, like for example, I know Scott Sigler and Stephen King both have written horror novels where the madness of the characters expressed in the decay of the font or the scribbliness of the font, and so that's actually part of the storytelling experience, and that seems to me to be lost on the Kindle. Is something lost in a translation to a Kindle?
It's hard to say. I mean, I think if you're using the official Kindle version, like you bought it through Amazon, they can do the formatting pretty well. But if you used Amazon's PDF conversion things, those look pretty bad.
Yeah, I have.
Then you do lose a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it seems to be a little bit scribbly.
But I'm hopeful they'll overcome that problem.
So you just recently were at the Book Expo in New York City, which is the largest book show in the world for this sort of thing, and you heard a lot of traditional publishers and agents and people from the traditional book world speak. I imagine there was terror in their eyes when they were looking at the Kindle. What were the sort of the impressions that you had coming away from that? What did you hear?
There is terror in their eyes. If you're a publisher, and as you said in your intro, you were dead on. If you're a writer, times are good. Yeah. You just have to learn how to market yourself. But it was interesting. I sat on a panel with a couple of the CEOs of the top publishing houses. Simon & Schuster, HarperCollins, Hachette, and one other who I forget. And there was a telling statement where the HarperCollins CEO said, ebooks are 2% of our revenue right now, and when they're 20%, then we'll worry.
Wow. Well, that could happen very quickly, because we were talking a little bit before the show, and you relayed a story. You like your Kindle because, in part, you can get any book you want right now. So you no longer have to go to the bookstore. And then, so we're very quickly moving into a world where, in the bookstore, the Barnes and Nobles of the world, that's the one distribution channel they still control. There's no way for an independent author to get into the shelves of Barnes and Noble easily. Anyway, it's very difficult.
Someone actually asked them, "What's the best way you have to market books still? Is the internet changed that?" And they said, no, the best way to market books is still get the book on the front table at Barnes & Noble.
Well, unless you can get it on your Kindle, and you don't have to actually go to Barnes & Noble. I've actually discovered that, I used to, fish into bookstores and see what's going on. I don't do that really as much anymore because I've got the Kindle. Because I just go and see what's new and, what's been recommended for me, and I've gotten a little bit, out of that zone of doing it, so.
I think a lot of people have, and that's what's worrying them, is foot traffic to Barnes & Nobles are down.
Yeah, I noticed on the promenade, one of the, not Barnes & Noble, the other bookstore, Borders, just closed.
Borders is closing stores left and right.
I was stunned that it was gone. I had no idea it was that bad.
Yeah.
So, but it's
I was actually on a panel about the future of the book review, and these people are very worried because their medium for building pre-launch buzz for a book is disappearing. Right, you can't walk into the bookstore and see what's hot anymore because not as many people do that. You can't read about it in the LA Times book review section because it's gone. You can't read about it in a lot of other independent, book review papers because they're gone.
So not only the channels but also the medium through which they generate buzz are vanishing themselves. So
yeah, I mean, it used to be you just needed one book review in the New York Times book review section to become a bestseller.
Yeah.
That could make you as a book if it was a good book, and now
it's metastasized.
You can't do it.
Reading that.
You got to get on Oprah to be made an instant bestseller. That's the only thing they have left.
Wow. So if you're an author right now, there's a site called Lulu.com. There's several of these sites, but Lulu's the one I'm familiar with, where anyone can go create a book, and within the hour of uploading your PDF and figuring out your cover, your book is in Amazon.
Yeah.
It can possibly even be available for download on the Kindle within that same hour. You can upload it to Scribd and be selling it in the Scribd store within an hour. On the other hand, if you get a book deal, the publisher makes you go out and push your own book. By and large, I mean, there's some things they'll pay for, but by and large, it's in the author's lap to go out and publish them or push their book, market their book. Yeah. So, at what point do I not need a publisher? Are we moving into a world where the publisher really doesn't add any value if what they control is vanishing and this other world is getting much larger and more powerful?
I think we're definitely moving towards that world, and hopefully the publishers will figure out ways to add value. Right, the recording industry has figured out a way to add value, and that's promotion and helping the band. So the bands don't make money now through sales; they make money through concerts.
Right.
The bands have been changed from mass media things into kind of performers. Right. And they can still make a very good living doing that, so that's fine. But the book industry is a little bit different because an author isn't a performer.
Right. Right, so there's nowhere you reading your book live. If you're J.R.R. Tolkien, we're still sitting there listening to you read it. So it's not really, there's no such thing as a live performance. But I imagine, that there's probably other ways to add value, like movie rights and other things that go beyond the book.
Getting your book out there on the front page of Amazon and on the front table of Barnes & Noble, they could still add value.
Yeah.
But I think the way you publish has now changed, as you mentioned, because now you're not even going to get a book deal unless you've got a name behind yourself.
Yeah, it seems like you have to actually publish first.
Self-publish, get
build
a following.
Up first, and then that's what Scott Sigler did.
Take notice of you.
J.C. Hutchins, a bunch of folks that come out of the audiobooks universe have actually succeeded in doing that quite nicely. And Scott Sigler was the first one to actually achieve New York Times bestseller status. So there has been a breakout hit. So it's not a J.K. Rowling or Stephen King yet, but it's definitely it's in the big leagues enough. So it does seem like we're moving there. So what do you think about piracy? I mean, the fact that, when this sort of thing started happening in the, to music and movies, piracy became a huge problem. And do you think the same thing is going to happen with ebooks and the electronic version of publishing?
I think it definitely will become a problem. But I think as long as they can recognize that people will buy stuff if it's easily available, like that's what we've seen with iTunes, right? We're all willing to pay legally for music if it's really easy to do. Yeah. People pirate because it's easier for them to go download 30 gigs from a friend and then they have all that music. Right. But you will also go pay for it if it's available. Easy, right now it's kind of hard to buy a lot of books. Not everything's on the Kindle. Right. Not everybody has a Kindle. Not everybody wants to read on their iPhone.
Right.
So if you overcome those problems, then I think piracy will not be a problem at all because people will pay for it.
So that's the reason why. Do you think that there's anything intrinsic about the book itself, the fact that it is a book versus a movie or a TV show or a song that makes it less prone to piracy?
Yeah, because you can't rip it, right?
Oh, because you would have to scan. You're saying you'd have to scan the entire book in yourself. So
right, like the iPod took off like a shot because we all bought an iPod, and then we went home and we took our whole CD collection, threw it in our computer, ripped it, downloaded it to our iPod.
Only one person has to rip it, and then it's available for everyone. Whereas the same is true with the books, obviously, but it's a lot harder. I can very easily take my CD and make an MP3 of a song, whereas I'd have to sit there and scan in every page of a paper book in order to get a PDF version.
No one's going to do
make that available.
So it's going to be a very slow
So you'd have to somehow
conversion.
get the PDF, and then that would be released into the wild. So, yeah, I guess it is a little bit less prone. So that is interesting. So let's talk about Goodreads.
Sure.
So in your own words, what is Goodreads?
So Goodreads is a social network for book lovers. It's you can think of it as a book discovery and a community, really, for people to find books. Most people are on there cataloging their books, so adding books that they've read, writing their thoughts, and then your friends can see that information, and that ends up being the best way to find a book to read is asking or seeing what your friends have read.
So it's a social network like Facebook or MySpace.
Yeah.
But
all
a vertical
books.
social network with a twist. It's only about books.
Right.
So I become friends with you because we like the same books, or I suspect that your bookshelf is sort of like mine. So you're probably going to be talking about books that I'm going to like. So
exactly.
So do you use it? Is it primarily a book discovery engine in your mind?
People also like the cataloging element.
Well, tell me about that. What is that?
So you can catalog all your books. For instance,
categorize them, or what do you mean by cataloging them?
You add them to your profile.
Okay.
So, for instance, when we first started, we had a bunch of English majors. My wife's an English major, and she had. Did we ever say the story in this one?
I don't recall. But anyway, your wife's an English major.
My wife's an English major, and we had a lot of her English major friends come in on the site.
Yeah.
And they went nuts. They added every book they'd ever read throughout their whole lives, all the way back to children's books.
Wow.
Some of them were like, "I got no work done."
They just wanted to have
today.
They just want to have that number of books be large, so that they.
Yeah. But it's like a trip down memory lane, right?
Yeah, sure.
You think back to the books you read in junior high, and it kind of reminds you who you were back then. And the books we've read kind of define us.
It's interesting. When I meet someone new and I go to their house for the first time, I like looking at their bookshelf because now I'm seeing inside their head to a certain degree.
Exactly.
And you're right.
Yeah.
The bookshelf is in fact somewhat a reflection of the person. I think so. So now on Goodreads, I don't have to go to your house anymore. I can just go look at your Goodreads profile, and now I'm looking inside your head, so to speak, which is a bit interesting. So. How old is it? How long has it been around?
We launched at the end of 2006, so about 2.5 years old now.
Okay. And how many users do you have?
We're up to 2.2 million registered users.
Oh, congratulations. That's pretty sizable, actually.
Yeah, it's grown. It's grown like a weed.
So, before you started Goodreads, what were you doing, and what possessed you to go and say one day, wake up and say, you know what, I'm going to do a social network. It's going to be about books. And you could have very easily done this on Facebook or Ning. You could have. There was no reason why you had to replicate the social network, skeleton that has been done a million times already. So I'm kind of curious first of all, why you chose to do it, and then why you chose to do it as a standalone social network, a vertical social network, which at the time I would have said that was a risky move. It's since very much proven to be correct, the correct impulse on your part. But why did you do it the way you did, and what possessed you to do it?
So Facebook platform didn't actually exist when we started.
Oh, that's true.
So it was
Facebook itself was
do
around, but they didn't have the API yet.
Yeah, although now we are on Facebook, and we have both the standalone and the Facebook app and the MySpace app, and we're really trying to be a platform of showing off your books wherever you're hanging out online.
But I think Ning was around, so I think you could have gone that route at the time.
It's not very extensible.
Yeah.
But I had a background in social networking, really, in social software. I worked from 2000 to 2006 at a company called Tickle. Yeah. And it was primarily a testing company. What kind of dog are you? What's your favorite color? And then you share and compare your results. So all very viral, word of mouth, fun entertainment things. And it was also kind of a labs company. We launched a social network right after we saw Friendster's success. that we grew up to millions of users. We did a photo sharing service after we saw how cool Flickr was that grew to be at Alexa Top 500 site. We did a dating site after we saw how profitable Match.com was that grew to be a top 10 dating site. And
so you'd been down this road before, basically, and when your DNA had been prepped already to do this, if you will.
So I had some experience doing social software, and then I had seen with the dating industry that it went from big generic sites to really niche, useful sites. Like for instance, JDate is a dating site for Jewish people.
Right.
And for every ethnicity, sport, demographic you can think of, there was a dating site.
Right.
Because people who had that in common wanted to just find those kind of people, and they felt more comfortable there than in the big, massive, confusing Match.coms of the world.
So the fact that it was, a specialty site and themed actually lent to its attraction to a certain type of person.
Definitely, and I could see social networking was going to do the same.
Yeah.
We had our MySpace and Facebook, but we were going to have our niche sites. We were going to have our Last.fms, our Pandoras, our Flicksters. You can think of niche social networking sites for most big genres and even small genres now. So I wanted to do one around a niche that AI wanted to use and be that no one had done. And so I'd always loved to read since I was little. I wanted to read more than I did, right? I was like a hardworking tech guy, not reading as much as I would have preferred.
So you decided to invent a job for yourself, which combined tech and you had to read, actually. So I noticed I know I'm a Goodreads fan, as I know you know, and I notice you do read a lot. I notice your profile. We're friends on Goodreads, and I notice that your books do update quite frequently. And I'm always like, wow, is Otis getting anything done? He's reading too much. You are definitely a voracious reader. From at least you pretend to be on Goodreads. So I think you are.
It's all about priorities,
Yeah.
If your priority is to watch TV for an hour before you go to bed, then that's one thing. If your priority is to read for an hour before you go to bed, then that's another thing. And it's not hard to make that switch.
When you read, so now you're using the Kindle to do some of your reading. You're obviously using regular books for most of it. I think at this point still. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
What about the iPhone?
I actually don't have an iPhone.
Oh, okay. So
but my wife does. So we have one in the house.
So does she read on the iPhone, or is that?
She does. She does. Well, actually, she didn't. She just started last week.
Oh, really? So
she's reading a book. I think it's called The Woman in White, which is published in the 1800s. So it's out of copyright.
Yeah.
And we went to New York for Book Expo, and she forgot it. It's a big, thick book. So I said, "Oh, well, that book's in the public domain." So I went on to Goodreads. I found it. We have it on the site.
Ah, okay.
Through a partnership with.
So you did not go through the iTunes App Store. You didn't buy it. Because I know that there's a huge book section now in the iTunes App Store that's become fairly, there's actually major publishers in there now playing around. So so you basically went and got the PDF from a public domain site.
Actually, she got it on Stanza, which is the most popular iPhone app. But I also put it on my Kindle for her through the PDF. And so we were in the New York subway, and she started scrolling on Scanza, found her place, and was hooked.
Oh, that's great.
She was hooked for all day.
So the successful reading, did she read the entire book?
And my wife is non-technical, so if she can get into reading a book on the iPhone, your average person can.
So what do you think? What does the iPhone do to the Kindle? Does the iPhone kill the Kindle eventually, or how does that? I
think Kindle needs to morph into the iPhone.
So I'll be answering my Kindle potentially.
Not in terms of a phone, but being touch, being a tablet.
Yeah.
Amazon talks about their e-ink being all cool. It doesn't impress me.
Well, it's kind of nice in the sunlight. I mean, you can't really read on an iPhone, at the beach, which is one of the reading use cases that's very popular, and it just doesn't work. But
can't you?
Well,
have you tried it?
You can. It's not the same. Yeah. Actually, I suppose it's just a personal opinion thing, but I find the Kindle in the sunlight is quite nice on my eyes. It doesn't even feel like an electronic thing. Whereas
that's true.
The iPhone, but the cool thing about the iPhone is it's in my pocket. It's always with me. I own an iPhone too.
And that's the reason it's going to be more popular. There's so many more people out there with iPhones. It's so much more affordable. Only your rich geeks are going to be able to afford the $300 Kindle.
Right. Well, I mean, the iPhone is what now? It's like $199 at this point, or?
Yeah, but because it's a phone, you can justify it.
Yeah, that's true. So it's a multi-purpose. So basically, it's not just the price; it's the fact that it's multi-purpose. It's the fact that you buy one device for all of your stuff. I guess I buy that. So, well, Amazon must have felt the same way because they rushed that Kindle app out like like lightning. I've never seen an app rush out that fast. And they got on the Kindle, and it was kind of cranky and not quite there. You could tell that it was definitely a defensive maneuver on their part. So interesting.
Well, I think they have a problem with DRM.
Yeah.
Which is that all the books sold through the Kindle are DRM protected, meaning I buy it and I don't really own it. Yeah. I can read it on my Kindle, but I can't take that file and put it on my computer or my iPhone until they launch the app.
You've purchased a license to view it.
I've purchased a license to view it.
That's pretty much all you got.
And I don't really own it.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Which I think is a problem.
That is a problem.
So they realized people were reading on the iPhone, and they had to get those books on the iPhone, so thus they had to have an app. And they're going to have this problem on every other reading device. They're going to have to make an app so I can read my licensed book.
And what about like the Sony Reader? Where's that falling into the mix here?
It's a competitor.
A decent one? Is it?
I have the older model, so I'm not able to say if the newer one is good.
All right, let's put it to the test. Are you reading books on it?
Not at all. I don't even know what it is. It was missing search.
Oh,
so here's my biggest problem with the Sony e-reader. You pick up a book after a couple of days of not reading it. You open it. You see the name of some character. You don't remember who they are, right? You want to go, oh, who was that? What's happening? You can, and on an e-reader, you can flip back a page at a time, but you're not going to be able to be like, I think this guy was introduced 20 pages ago. Right.
There's no random access with the flip back.
So on the Kindle, you can just search for his name, and then you get, oh, he was, and it's actually sometimes faster if it's a guy introduced a long, long time ago to find them. But if you don't have that easy search, you can't.
Yeah,
it just gets frustrating.
It can be a bit of an issue. So let's talk about authors. I noticed that one of the focuses of Goodreads, I think a very wise one, is you cater to the author. The author's invited to come into the system, set up a special author page, put their books in. You have a lot of services which cater to the author, and you have a whole section where people can go and discover the authors. And you've got some pretty big names in there. And
we do.
Yeah. So who are some of the bigger names who have, first of all, chosen to put their author profiles on Goodreads?
Sure. Our biggest two are probably Paulo Coelho, who wrote The Alchemist.
Yes.
Very, international bestseller.
He's interesting. I've seen him on Twitter. I follow him on Twitter also. And
he is very active online.
You wouldn't think that guy would be an internet guy, but he very clearly is, or someone around him is, because he's on top of everything. He's
blogging 20 times a day, friending people, talking to people. We did a Q&A on the site with him maybe over a year ago now. And we got a couple hundred people in there asking him questions. It was a 3-week thing.
Wow.
That group is still active.
Wow. Well, Paulo Coelho's
there are people who still go in there
popular.
and think Paulo Coelho's answering questions.
Well, he might come back based on what I've seen on Twitter and some of the other places. I've been
And
rather
we've also
impressed.
got people like Jennifer Weiner, who's an international bestseller mostly for women's fiction. Neil Gaiman is very big.
Oh, Gaiman's, I didn't realize that. Okay, so is he active on Goodreads? Or?
He is pretty active, yeah.
And so there's a lot of authors that look at Goodreads and say, this is a great way for me to connect to my readers. Some authors hate these things; they don't want to connect to them. But the newer generation realize that online promotion is part of being an author. That's not the marketing department. That's you. You have to go and do that. So, what would you say to authors that are basically trying to become known or already known and need to connect with their audiences? What's the Goodreads approach to promoting your stuff as an author?
Yeah, you can think of it a lot like what MySpace has done for bands.
Right. That's a very good analogy.
It's a platform where you can have a profile, you can start accumulating a fan base, you can friend people, you can respond to people's discussions, and you can really start creating a following. And, if you don't have a following, you can start getting into the niches of where people are discussing your books and becoming known. And it's actually, it takes a bit of effort, as you're saying.
Yeah.
But if you're willing to put in the effort and people can sense you're genuine, I think you can actually make a pretty big difference.
Yeah.
And we've developed a lot of tools to help authors do that, some of which are free, some of which are paid.
So tell me about let's talk specifics on that. What is free, and then what do you have to pay for?
We'll start with free, since I imagine people want free.
Sure.
Our most popular free feature is a book giveaway program.
Okay.
People can list as few as 1 or 5 or 10 copies of a book to give away to whoever wants it.
Yep.
Our members come in and request it, and then we have this little special sauce algorithm that after a couple weeks picks the winners.
Okay, so it's a lottery basically. So
yeah, it's a book giveaway, and so the idea here is you want to build buzz for your book pre-launch.
Right.
The giveaway program is designed for books that have come out within the last year. or about to come out. Sometimes a lot of the books are not even out yet that you can win.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah.
So you can go get books ahead? I didn't know that.
Yeah, so we're working with Random House, HarperCollins, all the big publishers.
Can I select the format in which I get it? Like, could I get a Kindle version as opposed to a...
Strangely, we can't do ebooks.
Okay. Well, something new for you to think about.
It's a publisher issue. They won't send out the ebook.
They're afraid it's going to get in the wild. That's why.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense.
But so we get, if you list 10 books, we got on average 700 people requesting.
Wow.
So that's 700 people interacting with your book. A lot of them will add the book to their shelves, so now you get a lot of people with it to read.
Yeah.
And so what happens when...
Yeah, the to-read thing, actually, let's hit on that for a second, because
sure.
I notice that I love that when I go, I'm always interested, I never thought it would be possible to know who was reading, like, my books before, and I go in there and I see, I love checking it just to see, like, people put it on their to-read list,
yeah.
and I go back and I'm like, okay, did you read it? And I'm like, all right, you better read it. But no, I don't do that. But nonetheless, it's very interesting to get that feedback. That was sort of a pleasant surprise. The first time I saw that, I was like, oh, that's really cool. I like that. So I imagine, have you had any other feedback from authors to that?
Oh yeah, they love it. Because as you said, it's an indication that people have intent to read your book.
Yeah.
And maybe they haven't gone and bought it, but they've said, oh, this is interesting enough for me to read. And then what happens when they add it to their to-read, it goes on, just like Facebook. We have news feeds and updates. So the next day their friends will get an email saying, Otis wants to read The Pocket Independent. And it'll be on my profile, and it'll be on my friends' homepage.
Yeah.
So then they might go, oh, why does Otis want to read this? Let me check it out. And then they might put it on their to-read. So you get this whole
viral effect.
Yeah,
no, that's great. What about the traditional publishers? You mentioned that you were working with them on this promotions. So they've obviously engaged you. They obviously see you as a force now, or at least a channel to basically promote. Now at the LA Times or whatever, the traditional ways of promoting a book are becoming less influential or not there at all. They're looking at you as the new version of this. Tell me about your interactions. First of all, with the publishers. I'm curious to hear what that's been like.
Yeah, it's been interesting. They've been very open to trying new things, like the giveaways, and they give us great access to the authors. We do a monthly newsletter that goes to 1.5 million people every month. We do 2 author interviews in that, and so it's really helped us, just get a foothold there. And also on the advertising side, as these mechanisms for them have been decreasing, the traditional mechanisms for building buzz on a book, it's much harder for an author to get speaking gigs. It's harder to get on the Today Show.
Yeah.
Even if you do get on the Daily Show or something, it's not the bang it used to be.
Right.
And only limited people can get on those shows.
Right.
So as their avenues decrease, the Goodreads is becoming a better and better medium for them to reach a really targeted audience.
Right.
And that's what we can offer, is we know exactly what everybody likes to read.
Uh-huh.
We can tell you like sci-fi, you like fantasy, and so we were working with them in an advertising sense of being able to target.
You can provide demographics
ads.
that normally, actually it's even better than what they were able to get before, because they couldn't get any of these demographics.
Right.
They have no idea who went into Barnes & Noble, who they were, who bought the books. I mean, they could probably sample their way to get a picture, but it's not the same thing. So that leads into the next question, which is, how does Otis make money? So, Facebook is famously struggling with their business model. They're obviously massively successful as a phenomenon, but monetizing it has proven to be a little bit elusive for them. Even the biggest of the big are having a little bit of trouble with this. How does Goodreads make money, and where do you succeed where they fail?
Well, first of all, I would disagree that they're failing.
Oh, really? Tell me about that.
I think Facebook, Mark.
Well, I don't think they're failing, but
Zuckerberg,
it's not a huge breakout success.
It's not a huge breakout success, but they are cash flow positive if you listen to Mark Zuckerberg. And if they didn't have the scale and all the employees they have and trying to do so many things, if they tone that back, they could easily be profitable. And MySpace is very profitable.
Mm-hmm. This is true.
So actually, we're trying to follow in the footsteps of the bigger social networks in terms of our monetization strategy.
Okay, so you think it's working? You actually think that is the way to go?
I think if anyone's going to figure out, it's them.
Yeah.
And so we're wise to follow in their footsteps.
I actually kind of like your chance. In some ways, I like your approach better because you're more niche, which means you have a higher dollar value that you can command, for eyeball. I know that all of your 2 million readers read, or 2 million users read.
Yeah.
So if I'm trying to market a book, for example, I couldn't ask for if you get even more specific than that, I couldn't ask for a more targeted demographic. So, You know.
No, I mean you've exactly hit on it. So yeah.
Even on Facebook, I'm not going to be able to get to that kind of targeting. So I would think they actually have a pretty good chance.
Yeah.
So tell me about some features that nobody knows about on Goodreads. What are sort of the nice little nooks, like the secret cafes, if you will, of Goodreads that maybe they're new and that's why people don't know about them, or maybe it's an idea that you came up with but didn't really catch on, but it still might. What are sort of the secret little corners of Goodreads that nobody knows about?
The secret corners. Where to start on that? That's a good question.
Yeah.
I'll start.
Are there no secret corners?
I'll start with following.
Yeah.
So Tim O'Reilly posted a blog post 3 weeks ago titled "Goodreads versus Twitter: The Benefits of Asynchronous Following," where he basically argued that because we just had one-way friendships, as does Facebook and MySpace, that Twitter was more popular because the people who want to follow other people's information
you have
asynchronous.
two-way friendships, whereas Twitter has one-way.
Two-way friendships. Yes. Sorry.
So on Twitter I can follow you.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. If you're following me or not, it doesn't really matter. I can still follow you.
So I mean, his problem is he's a semi-famous guy.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to know what he's reading. They want to be friends with him, but he doesn't. His site is going to become useless for him if he's got to follow all those people.
Right.
So we just launched following. So now you can be friends with somebody and you can just follow their reviews. And this is going to be really interesting for the independent booksellers of the world. The clerk that works in the independent bookstore of the world who maintains a personal blog. The micro celebrities in the book world, really interesting thinkers, the authors like Malcolm Gladwell, all these people. Now you can just follow them and they can post their book updates and reviews, and those can be consumed by people who are interested in them.
Got it. Oh, cool. I'll have to check that out. I haven't seen that yet. So
yeah, it's brand new.
When did it launch? How long ago?
Last Thursday.
Oh, so very new.
Very new.
Oh, very good. Well, congratulations on that. So I know what it's like to launch something recently, so I know all about that. And then one final question, and then we'll have to run out of time, so we'll have to call it a show. What interests you right now in digital publishing? What is the thing that you've seen that's made you kind of go, wow, that's cool, or that's really, or maybe it's not cool, it's just good business sense, and it's going to make a lot of money. I know for me, the thing that's sort of been interesting is both DocStock and Scribd. I had actually never considered the idea of selling a book in the browser online, and of course with both of those you can actually download the documents as well if the author lets you. So it's not just on the screen. But in particular, as Scribd is more book oriented, so I love. That actually does preserve the PDF perfectly. So pictures and fonts are exactly what they are in the paper version. When you turn a page, it's got a nice little, kind of page turn thing that it feels like a book. So I'm not sure if it's going to work, but the fact that Google's got their eyes on it suddenly, and there's other action around it is interesting. But I'm wondering, what do you think? What have you seen that sort of made you go, wow?
I'm going to agree with you and then add on one piece.
Okay.
Because I think that is interesting. I think you're giving authors who, as you may or may not know, if you're an author and you publish through a traditional publisher, you get very little money unless you sell a lot of books.
Oh yes, I do know that. It's pathetically little, unfortunately.
Yeah. So
even if you are a New York Times bestseller, it's not really that much actually. It's weird. It's oddly it doesn't take a huge amount of books to become a New York Times bestseller, of which you get a little smidgen of each book. So.
Right. So actually, it's kind of interesting that most authors do not write for the money.
Yes.
I mean, you might be one of them, but if only
I write for fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I work at Mahalo for my money.
Right.
But I don't expect, the books are fun for me. I just enjoy doing them. So.
Yeah. Chris Anderson, who wrote The Long Tail, I was at a panel, and he said an interesting thing, which was that 90% of the authors are not making any money. Only 10% of the authors, 300,000 books published a year, only 10% of those are going to make anything, and only the top 2% of those are making a good living.
Yeah.
And so what are the rest writing the books for? For fun?
To support other businesses too. They
for their peers, for
loss
support.
Leaders, for speaking gigs. I mean, there's other
They all
reasons
clearly had their reasons because the books are there.
Yeah.
And those people, if they're not writing them for the money, why do they need to sell it?
Right. Oh, I see.
Why don't they just give it away as much as they can and maybe make a little bit of money off of whatever does sell? Because if you get your name out there more, you're gonna get more. Like, is it better to be obscure or better to be known?
Yeah, well, that is the author's dilemma, is that they are obscure. They fear obscurity more than they fear not making a nickel every time someone reads their work. So I know a lot of the audiobooks authors. There's a lot of work that goes into making one of those MP3 audiobooks, and there are a lot of people who early on were saying, "Oh, that's stupid," because the publishers are gonna be angry with you that you're not gonna be able to sell your book afterwards. Scott Sigler is case in point. He went and became hugely popular, millions of downloads, and which is where the top audiobooks authors are at in these days. And that was what he actually went through 10 years of rejections before he was able to, and it was really the success in the audiobooks world that let him leap over that.
You got to be known. I heard another good example of that exact same thing. You know the book, The Last Lecture?
Yeah.
So Rowney Pausch, the Carnegie Mellon professor that passed away to cancer.
Yes.
And so that book was based on a YouTube video that was a phenomenon, right? Mm-hmm. So everybody saw that video.
Yes.
It was like an hour long. We all watched it. We cried.
Yep.
We felt good about our lives. And so I met the editor who published that, and he said most people weren't going to take the book because the story's known. What's left to tell? Right? The guy's got a couple months left to live. The video's been told, and he did the book anyway. Had a guy interview him and ghostwrite it, and the book's a bestseller.
Of course.
Because
everyone knew
he's
it.
known.
Yes. People have no problem buying things if they know what they're getting. So well, I'm afraid we're out of time.
Yeah.
So Otis, I want to thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on Bibliotech.